sir. We are the Group 6. I am Jane Dalo, together with my group mates, John Roland Calope and Hannah Jane Gavin. So today, we will talk about a crankshaft deflection. But before that, we must first know what is a crankshaft. So it says in there that the crankshaft is considered to be the backbone of all combustion engine. So a crankshaft is the main element of the motor mechanism, and it sums up the rotational motion of all cylinder and transmit it to the consumer. So ang crankshaft siya ang serve as a backbone that is responsible siya sa proper operation sa ato ang engine, in which siya ang convert sa force generated by the combustion in the engine into a rotary motion. So ang pagbaba at pagtaas ng piston is converted into a torque resulting for a rotational motion of all cylinders. So those torque is ita-transmit niya ito sa mga consumer. So next is the crankshaft deflection. So a crankshaft deflection is the change in distance between a crank web measured during one rotation of the crankshaft. A crankshaft deflection indicator is used to measure if there is any deflection on the engine's crankshaft. A deflection can be measured by detecting the horizontal or vertical misalignment of the bearings. So, itong crankshaft deflection is the changes of distance sa ating crank webs due to some faults in the systems, like there are low oil pressure, abnormal wear of bearings, loss of bolt foundation, or even human error. Baka mali ang pagka-reading nila nung last time kaya lumala ang sitwasyon. So that if this crankshaft deflection become worse, it will lead to breakage of the crankshaft and to the other parts na naka-connected to it, maybe possible be damage also. And the crankshaft deflection can be measured by the use of a measuring device and indicator that will be discussed in next slide. So next, there are two types of deflection gauge. So the dial gauge and the digital gauge. So when we say dial indicator or dial gauge, ang operator ay talagang manually interprets the position of the pointer. The pointer indicated in the gauge to read the measurement. So talagang manually ang pagre-readings ng mga gauges. So while in the indicator gauge, it is automatically interprets the reading once the gauge is placed. So ang mga operator work becomes much easier and maging mas improve pa ang work productivity with less time spent on the recordings data and copying tasks. And much accurate reading is given to compare the dial gauge, since automatic na siya and mo give na reading. So next, when we conduct a crankshaft deflection. So a crankshaft deflection should be done in accordance with any planned maintenance when an engine survey is conducted. So kapag nasa PMS dapat talaga, or plant maintenance system, dapat talaga mag crankshaft deflection para ma-ensure that the crankshaft is in good condition, and especially safety of the crew and to the equipment and also to our ship. So under normal running circumstances, once or twice a year. So if there is any abnormalities that being observed under normal running condition, then it is better to conduct a crankshaft deflection para maiwasan natin ang mga mas malala pa ang deflection sa ang crankshaft. So and after replacing the main bearing shell, and again after approximately 100 hours before an engine after overhaul in the case of auxiliary engine. So kapag may mga changes, either overhauling or replacing the main engine bearing, so it must conduct measure the crankshaft deflection to ensure that all the crank webs is in the proper distance, that the bearing and other component may not be damaged or in the proper condition or proper distance. So if there is any sign or damage of the bearing also.
Good day, sir. I am John Roland Calope. So I belong to group 6. So in the emergency or what emergency situation we apply crankshaft deflection. So first is in case of temperature of bearings increases. So first is we will maintain the bearing to avoid overheating or increasing of its temperature. So next is the damaged bearing. So once the bearing is damaged, you replace it by new bearings to avoid any damage to our crankshaft. So next is where does crankshaft deflections can be done. So in what situation or in what area. So crankshaft deflection is done between the crank webs ng various points round. So in deflection of in crankshaft, we can do it between the crank and various rounds of the circular rotation of the crankshaft and before commencing the crankshaft deflections measurements. So I will mention the following condition must be met or can be done. So the vessel must be afloat and even keel as much as possible into the water. So the vessel must be afloated in the sea. So next is the crankshaft must rest at all main bearings. So before deflection of crankshaft, so we must rest the bearings to complete the operation. So last is open the indicator valves. So it needed to be opened during a deflection of crankshaft. On how crankshaft deflections can be done. So the crankshaft must always be rotated in such a way. So it must be rotated regardless of the engine's normal rotation direction. So we can rotate the crankshaft in its normal direction of the rotation. So the crankshaft alignment is checked using a dial gauge. So it is a kind of measurement that we can measure the alignment of the crankshaft, which is called the dial gauge. So the gauge is fitted between the adjacent webs. So it fits in the webs. So we can determine the exact alignment of its position. So opposite the crank pin at half of the diameter from the shaft center. So deflection should be measured at the 4 points on the crank, namely the top and bottom. So and two sides, and there's two sides, top, bottom, and two sides. So the dial gauge and the crank web spread at different angular position of the shaft.
So, good day, sir. I am Gabi Hannah Jane P. from Group 6, and yes, I will be continuing to report about uh, crankshaft deflection. So, why do we need to do? So, why do we need to do a crankshaft deflection? First, because crankshaft deflection are excellent method of determining engine to drive alignment and main bearing wear. So it is important that we conduct crankshaft deflection because in our engine it might take our engine into destructive or our system into destruction when there is a bending to our crankshaft. Then it is important to measure the crankshaft deflection and able to find the fault in alignment of the crankshaft. So as I've said, if there is any misalignment, and then through this crankshaft, through doing crankshaft deflection, we are able to find the fault or the cause of the alignment or misalignment. Then the flex on crankshaft will take out the engine out of service, and the repairing process is very expensive and time consuming. So if we don't take actions in our defect in our crankshaft, and then our engine maybe will not be in good running condition, and in changing engine it may be very expensive and time consuming, and instead or likewise or no if ever we try to find the fault in our crankshaft, then only we can replace the crankshaft and not the engine wholly. So what could cause deflection in this crankshaft? So in these slides it talks about the possible causes of how or why a deflection in a crankshaft could occur. So first, it may be a loose foundation bolt leading to vibration. So common problems in crankshaft is misalignment is due to too much vibration during when engine is running. So if there is a vibration, there is a possibility that the bolts may lead or it may tend to loosen from its grip. So that's why it may cause the crankshaft to misalign. Second is the ship's hull deformation due to an incorrect load of cargo. So an impact, the loading of cargo has an impact also in deformation of our ship's hull, in which like the ship's hull is somehow connected to our engine. So crack in the bearing saddle, bearing wear due to usage over time. So that's why that we need to check, or it is stated in our planned maintenance that when or so the bearing is still usable, because too much usage of bearing or not what they call this one, not changing the bearing due to relevant or excessive usage of engine or running of engine without changing the bearing may cause also to bearing to wear. Then it causes like leakage or break ang bearing. And then strong variations temperature, so such as engine fire, explosion, and etc. Lastly, deflection in the crankshaft could occur during human error. So if deflections are high without any of the aforementioned reasons, the engineer should recheck their measurements. So if ever that the reasons that you have deflected the crankshaft but still it leads to breaking of the crankshaft, then we might consider checking or rechecking the deflection that we made. So lastly, in conclusion, the crankshaft is considered to be the backbone of combustion engines that sums up the rotational motion of all cylinders and transmits it to the consumer. So as stated, the crankshaft is the backbone, in which if like the human body structure, if our backbone refuses to do well or to function well, then it might cause our body in bending or in misalignment. So also it's stated here that the rotational motion of the cylinders depends on the crankshaft movement. So to determine engine to drive alignment and main bearing wear, a crankshaft deflection is conducted, because deflects on crankshaft will take out the engine out of service, and the repairing process is very expensive and time consuming. It also ensures of the safety of the crew and to the ship. So at the end of this crankshaft deflection, it all goes down into one term or one condition, which is to ensure safety of crews and ships, in which if safety is let's call this one, if safety is present, and then can ensure that the main engine or our engine and also the personnel is in safe condition. So I think that would be all for our topic, and thank you.